Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I'm always thrilled to welcome a first-time guest. So welcome to a first-time guest to MMA Fancast, John Leancu. John, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show. I was motivated to get you on the show because you are a coach and train out of All-American MMA Academy with Nick Brown, who's famous and in Bellator and has a huge fight coming up, and I've already interviewed one of the amateur up-and-comers in Carly Joe Thomas. So I figured it was a great opportunity to have you come on the show. You're under 2 weeks away from a fight. We wanted to get to that. But if we could, you're referred a lot to online for my stalking as a coach. So let's jump into that first, and then we'll get into your fight that's coming up.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds good. So, I coach. Right now, I'm teaching classes out at the RIP Group. It's a private security firm in Charleroi, PA. And I was asked to go there to help them start their kickboxing program. So that was back in January of this year. And it's been going well. You know, I've had a good group of people there, and we're really, moving forward with the program. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. Is your main specialty kickboxing? Would make sense that it is, because you said you were brought in as a specialist. So I would assume that's kind of your specialty in coaching.
Yeah. So my main background in martial arts started with Tang Soo Do, right?
Okay.
For like Korean style karate.
Right.
And it kind of has morphed since I joined the All-American team. And, I have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background now, training under Nick Brown.
Yeah.
And, but the stand-up has always been my favorite part of martial arts and fighting in general. So, that's where my base starts there with the kickboxing. Yeah.
Well, that definitely makes sense. I myself, as a coach, have helped some Tang Soo Do and some of the Korean martial arts transition to MMA and kickboxing. So you obviously had a lot of stand-up experience, and we've seen it at the highest level. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, it's a very good striking background to then transition into MMA or a more Dutch style kickboxing. So it's pretty fantastic stuff. I need to make a joke though. When you said that your favorite thing to train is kickboxing, my joke is, are you sure it's not getting strangled and tortured on the ground by Nick Brown? I mean, I'm sure that's great. Like, have you lost track of the number of times you've had to say, tap, tap, please stop hurting me? Because.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We've gotten to a point now where I don't even really need to tap for him anymore. He just knows that he's got me in such a bad position that,
Right.
Let's move on to the next step. Because I had the pleasure of training with Nick before he was even a professional fighter.
Wow. Yeah.
So we've been together since, or at least I've been training with him since 2013.
Wow.
So it's been a long road. Thousands, millions of taps with Nick. Yeah, especially because I started the sport as a stand-up fighter, and then you start to get into the grappling. And my first experience in grappling was just walking into an open mat, and I got guillotined maybe every 10 seconds. So and nobody's teaching you or helping you with anything that you're doing. They're just letting you get choked minute after minute. And then you show up the next day and try again.
Right. Generally speaking, in my experience, open mats can be for complete novices, but typically open mats are more a gym's opportunity to allow fighters to cross-train, come in with their skills and kind of, polish each other. Obviously, you can be a complete novice in open mat as well. So if anybody's out there wants to take the Coach John approach to learning, just show up to an open mat and bring your humble pie with you, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, tap often. That's all I say. It's just don't be afraid to tap often. That's all.
Yes. Well, I think one of the nice parts about martial arts is you start being humbled and then you learn from there. And there will come a point, whether it be kickboxing, I'm sure you've caught some people in the BJJ ground game now because you're not where you used to be. And so clearly we brought up Nick Brown several times, and Bellator is pushing his incredible knockout over Naldo. I watched it.
Right.
Yeah, It's a great knockout. And so for somebody who's more or less known for the submission game and grappling, he had an incredible knockout that was seen by millions of people. And so Bellator is really, he's undefeated in Bellator. I'm sure that's exciting. One last question on Nick Brown. How involved, and maybe you're not because you're working at the other gym right now helping them, but I think he's pretty close to this big fight. So what's that process like for you as a training partner or just as a long time training partner, even if you're not active with him right now?
Yeah, so we get to get together twice a week right now with how my schedule works. And I just give him everything that I can. I try to be at the best level for him. Really my best gift to him, because of how his top level is with fighting, is to push his cardio.
Yeah.
So like whether we're doing stand up or whether we're grappling on the ground, I'm trying to help push his cardio as much as I can. So if we're doing stand up fighting, I'm in his face and I just don't back down from him.
Right.
To give him that in your face push. And same with the grappling. I mean, now with grappling, he's kind to me. So he allows me to scramble with him a little bit so that I'm not stuck in a submission position all the time.
Yeah.
But that's, I'm excited for his upcoming fight. I mean, I really wish I could be there for this one. I was up there for when he knocked out Mandela.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited for his career. He's been waiting for this opportunity to showcase his talents, and he's known as a ground guy, but people forget that he's a professional boxer as well. So I mean, his stand-ups there, and there's a reason why they call him NyQuil.
Yeah, either way, he can put you to sleep. A submission or a knockout. And one of the things that you brought up, which I think is really good for people watching, is that maybe just want to learn how to be a good training partner. Not everybody gets in a cage. I quote GSP probably too much on this show because I'm a big fan, but he said years ago when he was still welterweight champ in UFC, he named a couple guys, obviously, we know McDonald, some of the famous guys that he was training with that was helping him, but he mentioned some guy's name, and of course I can't remember it, who's never had a fight, but he not amateur, not pro, but he gave him a lot of credit for being a sparring partner that whole goal is to show up and help people with what they need to be. It's almost like a third string catcher in baseball whose real job is to get the pitchers the looks they need. No offense to third string catchers, but their role really isn't to show up in the game. Their role is to help the stars get better. And so I think that's something that if people aren't really motivated to fight, but they're motivated to train, all good gyms need great training partners. And thanks, John, for kind of pointing out how you try to help Nick, because you could back off and try to have a technical on your feet kickboxing sparring, but then you're not really pushing the cardio. You're not really helping him in a way that can tie over to his level. So pretty fantastic stuff. Now, getting back to you, you have an advanced amateur fight coming up in under 2 weeks. And it's exciting because I can read Tapology and I see the fact that you're making a return since you last fought in 2019. Obviously, there was this little break in 2020 called COVID, which, affected some people, but still it's a big deal that you're coming back after about 3-ish years. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I never really got into the sport per se to become a professional fighter, though it would be nice to have the opportunity to turn pro. I started in the fight game kind of late, and it was like random, right? A buddy of mine came to me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to learn some jiu-jitsu?" And I was like, "Yeah, it'd be great." And he dragged me out to an open mat at Uniontown, with what is now All American MMA, and I started working with those guys. Like the first guy I ever even got a chance to spar was Josh Fremd, who has made his opportunity in the UFC. You know what I mean? And I believe he's got another one coming up here soon, hopefully.
Josh Fremd, yeah, absolutely.
And then I got after a while getting beaten up by these guys, you decide like, hey, maybe I'll take a run in the cage. And I fought maybe like once a year, with a wife, kids, full-time job. you know, it makes it tough to train. Like these guys these days train full time, you know, every day. They, you know, that needs to be their full time job. Even for an amateur now these days, it's
Mhm.
almost like a full time gig for these fighters. You know, the game has changed so much since the UFC made their big mark on the world. And I took a little bit of a layoff because it was an agreement between the wife and I, while we were still together, technically ex-wife at this point. But she wanted me to quit fighting. She was going back to school. There we go. So I made a change from being a chef to running heavy machinery. And I eventually, after my loss in 2019, it's September for the Cowboy Fight Series, I hung up the gloves just to work on our marriage and work, you know, help her get back to school and things like that. And I'm going to be honest, I'm making the comeback because I need something to do with myself. You know, now I don't have a house full of kids and the wife's not here anymore. I just said, hey, let's make a run. Let's make a run. Let's maybe try to get that pro card and have some fun with it.
Well, it's great that you have a new focus and new energy for it. Of course, I'm sorry to hear about the outcome of your marriage, and I wish you, you know, and the best with your kids. But yeah, you're right. One thing that you said, then I got to talk to you about that you used to be a chef. It now makes a lot more sense because there was comments about chef cooking up stuff in the cage, and I thought your nickname was the chef. I had no idea, you know, because you know, cooking up a new win. I didn't know, but we'll get to that in a second. But something you pointed out, Coach, that's really good is I've been doing this, you know, interview, mainly local, amateur, low level pro for about 5, 6 years, maybe more than 6 now. But it was unheard of when I first started interviewing people that amateurs would be like pros, you know, in their lifestyle. But in the last year, I've had several people on. Cody Gamble's the ones coming from my mind, and he's out of the Mac factory in Pittsburgh. But he came on, and I think he was 1-0 at the time, something like that. Great kid, big heavyweight, very impressive, young in his early 20s. But he shared on the podcast that he had sponsors because legal to get sponsors. He had sponsors, and that was his job, you know, to train. And he was living very inexpensively and keeping things very reasonable as an early 20-year-old can, and was just living to train and training to live, you know, that whole thing. And I give hats off to not only Cody Gamble for the incredible Cody Gamble for making it kind of his focus this young, but also sponsors who would sponsor a 1-0 amateur. There was a time where you could be a 10-0 pro, you know, go back 30 years ago, nobody was sponsoring anybody.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to see the progress, as you pointed out, UFC and Bellator and ONE and WSOF, which I know is now PFL. I just like baseball, so I always refer to them as WSOF. But PFL is doing some exciting things with their tournament style, which I personally like. And you know, their season, you have a regular season type thing. But all of those promotions, and of course Pride and even the defunct ones, Elite FC and others, they helped raise the status of fighters. So it is really cool to see somebody like you who've been in the game a long time understand what 10, 15 years have done for the sport. And I give hats off to the young talent that's what they're training. You know, they're training it. I've had several young guys on that took wrestling in order in the future to fight MMA. And it used to be always the opposite way. People would have wrestling or boxing background and then fight MMA. Now kids are doing it with MMA as the goal. But for you have this focus that you want this to be a potential run to get your pro card. So what do you think is important for you for this fight that's 12 days away?
Staying healthy, right? I'm getting older. I can't train like I did when I was in my 20s. I can't train like I did when I was in my early 30s. I'm 38. I'll be 39 next month. And it's a late run to try to do it. And I just got to really focus on how I train myself coming into this fight. You never go into a fight, or at least I've never had the opportunity to go in 100% healthy. There's always a nick here or a ding there or something that might be like aching a little bit. But yeah, my key focus has been on keeping my body healthy because I don't heal as fast as I used to. And if I push myself as much as I did when I first started, I probably wouldn't be able to walk the next day. And that's my key focus. I've been doing a lot of groundwork this time around. I missed rolling in jiu-jitsu a lot. And since I've been teaching the kickboxing, that
Right.
I kind of feel like that's always been at my forefront anyways. So I've been really hammering on my ground game as well, leading into this fight.
Well, that makes sense to balance out one of your strengths with an area that could also become a strength, which is fantastic. Often in the world of MMA, the areas which are your weaknesses, or I like to say areas for improvement, you can improve faster. Like it's easier if somebody's an expert, whatever it happens to be, in your case, very understanding of kickboxing, you can make progress in kickboxing, but it's going to be a little smaller than the progress you can make because you're already good at it, and the progress you can make in your case, jiu-jitsu, where you went from no experience to more experience. And I think we've seen that even at the high level where people get a rap for having a weak game. I mean, you even mentioned Nick Brown. He obviously does not have weak stand-up. I mean, clearly not. But it looks weak for commentators compared to his incredible ground game. But that in some ways is probably a good thing for people to think that his stand-up's weak because it allows him to get knockouts and other things that come his way. So hats off to you for working on your ground game, because if an opponent has a game plan, let's face it, they probably do have the game plan to take you down. That at least would be most people's plan with your experience. Then you have to be equipped on the ground. Now, speaking of ground, there's so many different rules in amateur. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has 3 levels of fighting: novice, advanced amateur, and then pro. And of course, if you go outside of Pennsylvania, the rules are different as well. So what are the ground game rules? Are you allowed close strikes to the head of a ground opponent, aka ground and pound? And how have you been working on that?
So I'm fighting up in Elmira, New York, for the Art of Combat Sport Championships, and I will be allowed the ground and pound. So, I mean, the focus doesn't really change, right? You just got to be aware that you're able to get struck in the face, as well as being able to use your jiu-jitsu. And I just been reminding guys that I work with down here that please, when we go to the ground, use some strikes, or at least if we're just doing a straight jiu-jitsu day, can you imitate some striking to the face to remind me that I got that worry as well underneath me. But when it comes down to it, if you want to get back up and you're on the ground and they're allowed to ground and pound you, you almost got to sacrifice one for the other. So you either protect yourself and you stay on the ground, or you might have to eat a shot or two to get yourself back up. I mean, there's no like happy medium between that.
Well, it also comes, as you point out, the way you train matters. And again, we're back to the topic of training partners. It makes such a big difference. And if anybody's new to being a training partner, or maybe they weren't really focused on helping the other training partner, do exactly what Coach John's saying his people do. Ask what they need to work on. So for you, asking somebody who's a pure chits guy to at least simulate slapping or punching, something that reminds you, oh, hey, even though that's not in jiu-jitsu, although they're now making combat jiu-jitsu, which is very interesting. And basically it's MMA without the stand-up striking, because as soon as you put striking, full contact striking on the ground, it is MMA in that sense. But it's exciting to see what combat BJJ does, because pure BJJ, where somebody could kind of wait and play sort of a trap game, doesn't work if you're getting punched in the face. So I think it actually is good in some ways for somebody like you to have learned jiu-jitsu for MMA, because you're learning it in an applied way. And of course, it's beautiful for the championship level BJJ guys that compete in the gi and learn all that stuff. But for an MMA application, you can kind of keep it more focused, like you said. Do something on the ground to keep yourself safe, or get back up, or look for a sweep or reversal, something that can change the situation, or get up. So that's also great advice for people learning it and trying to figure out game plan on the ground. Is you have to go way back in the UFC. from the last time somebody won a championship off their back. It was Kevin Randleman, if you were curious. But not too many people can win a UFC, and I might have that wrong. It might have been Boss Rutan taken down by Kevin Randleman. I might have that wrong. It's at least 20 years old. The last time a championship changed hands by somebody being on their back and striking up from their back. And I think it actually was Boss Rutan off his back striking, and they gave it to him, even though today that would never happen. The person on the top is almost always winning unless the person on the bottom pulls up a choke. And there's plenty of chokes and submissions, arm bars that work. Kimura's off the back. So there's plenty of things, an omoplata, there's plenty of things that can happen. For you, though, you said you need to stay injury-free, focus on the last week and a half of getting into the cage. For you, this is obviously a test for you. You've said that out there. So I give you hats off, hat tip to wanting to test yourself. Ideally, what would you want to kind of see come together in the cage for the Combat Sports MMA up there in Elmira, New York?
Well, when I get up there, you walk into that cage and you always have a game plan in your head, and it usually changes as soon as you get hit. But I would like to see myself be able to just control the fight on my feet first. And I really, if the ground game comes into play, it will. I've always liked cage wrestling. So, I like to be able to control the fight on my feet. And then if I need to slow it down, I can slow it down against the cage as need be. I mean, ultimately, I need to finish would be fantastic. That's what I'd like. I mean, besides my very last fight that I had, which the ref stopped it in the second round on me, I've pretty much gone the distance in all my fights. And I would really love to just have that finish and really just showcase my stand up a little bit to everybody, and just making an exciting fight, right? I mean, if you've ever followed me or watched any of my fights, they're usually bloodbaths. I like to stand in front of people. I like to throw. I like to exchange, and I'm just like an old school kind of fighter like that,
Hey, it's worked for the Diaz brothers, the old school bloodbath fighters. And obviously you're right there in age with the Diaz. So why not use their game plan and mindset? One thing that you brought up about cage control, cage wrestling, understanding that using the cage or the wall, whatever term, is an art in and of itself. Some wrestlers can be great wrestlers, but struggle to use the cage of the wall because it's such a different thing than what they're used to. And one thing I've seen commentating for 247 fighting championships out of Pittsburgh, being cage side and having to talk, and kind of look for stuff, is I've seen, and you probably already know it because you train with such high level guys, recently, just like 5-6 years ago, calf kicks and now they're in almost every MMA fight. And I was getting calf kicked probably 8 years ago by Brad Bennett, who was a local Philadelphia amateur. Shout out to Brad, who never really got anywhere with fighting, but he gave me drop foot so many times as his sparring partner, as his coach. And back then, nobody was using calf kicks. And I remember saying, like, why aren't people, it sucks. Why aren't people using calf kicks? I used to beg him to kick me in the thigh. Just kick me in the thigh, please. And now you have Joe Rogan and others talking about how that's such a more damaging strike because it's harder to block and those type of things. So one thing that I think is sort of similar to the calf kick, and I think in a few years might be used a lot more in MMA, is framing somebody's head up against the cage. And instead of trying to drop levels, although that's a tried and true method, framing them there and then just hitting them with an uppercut or an overhand, using it almost like a ground and pound. Because if a person's back's pressed up against the cage and you're framed and heavy on them, it's almost as if they're on the ground. And ground and pound is Randy Couture and others made that so devastating. I've watched that in more recent fights come over where it used to be when a person's cage control, let's say there's a reversal or something, it's either I want to get out of there, rip and turn and separate, or I want to level change and take it down. I've seen stand-up guys such as yourself, rip off the cage, exchange position, and then keep them there and use it as an offensive, almost pin, but up against, like a ground and pound up against the cage. Is that something that you've seen, or have I just been talking nonsense?
No, you're definitely not talking nonsense. And it's been taught since I started, to be honest with
Ah,
you. I mean, being able to use that cage
yeah,
as the extra person, that's like your
yeah,
tag team partner, right? That can use that cage to my advantage. It could be a disadvantage and you get pinned on it, or you
yeah,
can use it as an advantage. And something we always practiced was pressing a guy against the cage. And then when you're ready, releasing them, throwing your combo, pressing them against the cage again.
sure,
Then when you're ready, release, hit the combo, press them against. And you can almost keep repeating
yeah,
that
sure.
as they struggle to get off the cage.
Mhm.
And you're using it as a way for you to catch your breath and to fire off combos that they're not ready for, because you can time when you want to release, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you're saying, I'm thrilled that it's been taught forever in MMA. I agree with you. I think sometimes what's taught and what makes it into a fight can take time. We've seen that with the calf kicks. We've seen that with other skills where you train more than you use in fighting because MMA is so dynamic. It's tricky. Like, I mean, it's only been 6 years since a twister was ever used. The Korean Zombie was the first person to ever use a twister in an MMA fight for the UFC, at least. And twisters have been used probably for decades in jiu-jitsu, but putting it into an MMA fight where a lot more is going on, it takes time to kind of use some of these skills. So you're absolutely right using the old wrestling or WWE tag team. Instead of tagging a person's hand, you can use the cage as that. We've seen that even with the argument between DC and Stipe when there was a disagreement between what size cage they should use, because obviously the striker wants the bigger cage to be able to turn and move, and that was Stipe, and DC obviously wanted the smaller cage because he wanted to be able to push and get his legs. And we saw that kind of go back and forth. So a lot going on there. I'm thrilled to have you on the show, particularly because not only are you a coach and connected to All-American and helping another gym develop their striking, which is beautiful, wonderful, but also that you have this new focus and mindset that you want to put a run together if possible, and you have the skills. And I think coaching definitely helps the mind. I guess this can be our last question because you already sort of said what you want prediction wise and what you want for the outcome of the fight. What do you think is the greatest advantage you have from all your years of coaching? So to flip the switch from being a coach to being a fighter, you're never not a coach, so even when you're in there, you can still have that coaching brain. What do you think helps that when you're in a live fight?
So it helps you, right, kind of navigate the other guy. Like I'll be able to see how he's going to be coached. Because as a coach myself, if I'm taking advantage of him in a certain way, I can almost understand what his coaches are going to tell him that he's going to need to change in his game plan when he comes out. And then I'll be able to see those changes if they are happening. And if he was coached in that way, and then if I need to make an adjustment, it'll be easier for me to make an adjustment on my feet without having to hear somebody yelling at me from the corner. So, I mean, being able to coach, one, helps you pick out your own flaws, right? Because as you coach people and you're reminding them of the things they need to do, it reminds you of the things you need to do.
Yeah.
And then on the other aspect of it, it can help you pick somebody apart, because as a coach, that's your job, is to tell your, the person you're coaching what they need to do, what adjustments they might need to make.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it definitely helps, being able to coach. That's why I think we, in martial arts at a certain level, even like the blue belts, you start letting them, in
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu, you start letting them teach the kids classes, because it only helps advance you,
Right.
as martial
Yeah,
artists.
I've seen that. I've seen that quite a bit. And in BJJ, like you said, or even in like a kickboxing world where somebody's starting to put together a good amateur career, or have some experience, whatever it is, they can start teaching, because often it's technique, but it's also the application of the technique, which really takes sometimes coaching, because you can do the technique sometimes without being able to apply it to somebody who doesn't know it. So that can help quite a bit. In-fight adjustments are a huge deal. And like you said, you want to listen to your coaches. They're there for a reason. But if you can coach yourself while you're in there, it makes their job easier, because if they notice that you do an adjustment, then in the in-between rounds, they can say, stay with that adjustment. I saw that adjustment, and I've told people that in corners when I was cornering, that hey, I can see that you picked up on this, so stay with that, because oftentimes if you can catch it, it makes it faster. So it's been an honor having you on. Obviously, best skills to you
Thank you.
for your fight. Can't wait to see how that goes and follow you in your push to make a run at going pro. So thanks so much for coming on. You've been listening to Luke for MMA Fancast with John, whose last name is French and a fun pronunciation, which I've forgotten. Leancu.
Leancu.
Okay, I was 85% of the way there.
Not to correct you too much, but it's a Romanian. So it's a Romanian last name, but yeah, it's still that Germanic,
Well, now I have to apologize doubly because I definitely don't want to compare a Romanian to a French. What was I thinking? For some reason, I was thinking it kind of sounds French Canadian. You know how French Canadian, but clearly I was wrong. So
no, that's everybody. Once you hear the pronunciation, everybody goes French first. So
okay, it's not just me then. Okay, then I'll take it.
And if you don't mind me going a little, I know you're closing out, and you don't mind me going off topic a little bit, but we've been doing a great fundraiser during my camp here.
Sure.
And if you don't mind that if I drop it,
go
and
for
we'll
it.
see what happens. But my kids have a daycare teacher named Patty Madden, and she is going through a liver failure right now, and she currently is on the transplant list, and she's got a match. Her son matched for the transplant, and in October they're going to actually go in and they're going to take part of his liver and be able to give it to her. But with the fight coming up, I did Chef John fight shirts. And here, on me. So Chef John fight shirts.
There it is.
Yeah, we thank you to Branded Threads for helping us out with that. They're local here in the Western Pennsylvania area. And on the back of this shirt, we did a nice quote from Theodore Roosevelt. The man in the arena. It's probably one of my favorite quotes.
Oh, it's a great quote.
All the proceeds coming from sales of those fight shirts are going to the Madden family. So, I mean, I've had a tremendous turnout so far. We sold about 100 shirts. And if anybody's interested in a shirt, you guys can find me on Facebook, John Leancu. Message me. If you're interested in a shirt, we'll get your size. I'll do shipping. I'll ship it out to you. There's no cost in your shipping because everything's getting donated anyways. And, it's just something I had an opportunity here with it coming through, and we're trying to, do something for somebody else.
Well, that is beautiful. That's you said Patty Madden and her family, and
yes.
The Chef John shirts work because that's who you are, Chef John. And also
so everybody calls me in the gym, Chef John. So
there you go. And what a great way to use your platform to help others. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Keep in mind for anybody buying the Chef John shirts that you're going to have to hold still when somebody wants to read Man in the Arena because it is fantastic, but it's a novel. I could see that. I mean, as a coach, that's like one of our hype up speeches where somebody would learn it and give it or at least read it. It's a beautiful speech. It's incredible. The Teddy Roosevelt Man in the Arena, but plan to hold still for a while because it's a long read, or just buy a Chef John shirt. Or just buy a Chef John shirt and you can read it all you want. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Please contact him through messaging on Facebook. That's how I got him on the show. You clearly look at your messages. So for anybody who wants to contact John, contact him through Facebook Messenger. He'll get right back to you for the shirts. That is incredible. Are they paying by check, mailing you stuff? How does that happen once they contact you?
Yeah, so I mean, we could do a Venmo payment if need be. We could do PayPal. You can send a check if you want. I won't even wait. If you want to wear a shirt, I'm not even waiting for the money to come in. I'll ship it out to you. The check can come when it comes. Like I said, because the money's already going over to the family. So as the shirts sell, I just keep putting it over to them. It's the love and support that I've gotten so far. I've gotten people out in Chicago ordering shirts,
Sure.
And then the money. I got people in Florida that have just donated outright, to
Sure.
the cause. And it's really nice to see how people come together. I mean, there's a lot of love in the fight world.
Oh, yeah.
And, even though it's an aggressive sport and, you think people are mean and hate each other, it's really, there's a lot of love.
There really is. So what's the cost of the shirts, which is also a donation to a great cause, but what's the cost of the shirts?
They're $20. They're
$20,
$20
okay.
for the shirt. Yeah, they're next level brand shirts, and they're a nice soft material. You know what I mean? I wanted to go with a shirt that's going to sit nice and people are going to like to wear. I don't want to go with those like rigid Gildan shirts that, you know, you get that bottom that flips up and then you can never unflip it, and every time you put the shirt on, it's just you know. So we went with like the next level brand shirt that's like 65% polyester, and the rest
Sure.
of them, yeah.
Much more comfortable, much better shirt. Support him. That was a jab at me below the belt, because every time I made a team shirt, it was always the Gildan shirts. But
Yeah.
I agree,
Sorry.
they are not the best. They're cheap though, but they're not the best. Thanks so much, Chef John, for coming on the show. Best wishes, best skills to you, and obviously for everybody, keep in your prayers a mother-son duo doing the liver lobe transplant. That is real love, and there's a certain amount of risk involved in the living liver lobe transplant. So be praying for them, because October's only a month away. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.